Hey everyone, welcome to the Palikari Business Podcast. My name is Abby.
And I'm Nick.
And we're the founders of Odyssey Productions Co., a video production company located in the Central Valley of California.
Yeah, the word Palikari is a Greek word that means a young person who's achieved great things beyond their years.
So in each episode of this podcast, we will be interviewing successful business owners, influencers, and entrepreneurs to learn from their wisdom, experiences, and even their mistakes in hopes of helping you achieve great things beyond your years.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
Our guest today is Jamie Griswold, the owner of Culture Coffee Bar located in Modesto, California. Culture Coffee's focus is to provide a space where community thrives and people feel seen and cared for. Jamie runs Culture with a team of amazing women. She's also a mom of two and a wife, and we just want to thank you for being on the podcast so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming out.
Awesome. So just to get started, can you share the story of Culture Coffee, so how you got started and how you got to the cafe that you have now?
Yeah, so to go back, I was working in the gym for a really long time, about 10 years as the training director. So I kind of helped build the business with them and really loved business and podcasts and business books. And I was just very into like entrepreneurship. And there hit a point when I was working there that I just felt like my time was done. And I had kind of done everything I could do in that job, and it was sort of time for me to move on from it. And so I had a few months out of that and kind of freed up some brain space because I didn't have all these other things going on, and just started to think, like, what would I do if I could do anything? My kids were, starting school at the time, or they were already in school, but they were in school all day, and just trying to find something to do with my time. And I was driving around one day, and the idea of a coffee truck randomly popped into my mind. And it's one of those things I feel like when something, enters your mind and you can't ignore it, then you should do something about it. Yeah. So I talked to my husband about it, and there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of prayer, a lot of, thinking through all the scenarios that could happen. And we just decided, okay, let's move forward, but in a small way. And so opening in front of the gym was the easiest way to do that. I knew the people that were there. I knew the community. They knew me and were familiar with, my face and who I was. And so setting up outside of there really made sense. And so we started with just cold brew and what we call our buff brew, which is a protein shake with cold brew in it. And we just did that for a while. And then tried to get permitted to do it through the health department. And apparently you can't do that, and I didn't know. We had started walking forward, and then had a step back with the health department saying, no, you can't do that. And so then we were at a point like, do we move forward with this thing, or do we back up and I just be a stay-at-home mom and do nothing? But again, it was one of those things that just wouldn't leave my mind, and we decided to take the step forward with having an actual trailer built, because per the health department guidelines we could do it that way. And so moved forward with that, had the trailer built, and that was a really long process. And then once that got here, we were able to start opening and selling coffee that way, and just started small, and having built the community at Get Fit, which is the gym that I worked at, building the community there and selling coffee outside of there for the short time that we did really helped build a community of people who wanted to support us. And so when we opened the trailer, we had people that were waiting for us to open and excited, and then walk that road to where we are now in the shop.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome that I like how whenever you started, you didn't like say, okay, what's the quickest way to make a buck? You said, if I could do anything, what would I want to do? Because then when you faced all those hurdles, it's like that's what fuels you to get over the hurdles, is having that passion and desire. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and for me, it's never been about making money. I mean, obviously you're running a business and that's important, and I take that very seriously, but that was never the intention behind the business in any sort, until we started running it and becoming profitable. Then it was, kind of took focus. But from the beginning, it was just, how can we serve our community? I love people. I love caring for people and seeing people. And so that was like, okay, how can I go hang out with my friends and just talk to people and do something fun and provide something for our community? So
coffee's the perfect thing for that.
It really is.
Awesome. So what were kind of some of the things you learned over the course of that whole journey that you had, where you were, because that's a lot of things that you were learning and doing, and so
Yeah, it's really hard to sum it up because I learned a lot. I didn't go to business school. I don't have a degree in anything. I started having kids very young. And so not having a background in business and not having a background in even coffee. I worked at Starbucks for a couple of years, but that's all the experience I have. And so there was a lot of learning, a lot of, phone calls and asking questions and just finding ways to get things done. And it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yep. Kind of the whole way.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's good. You were willing to call people to learn to do the work. And I like that you pointed out, too, that it's not like you had a business degree or you had all this knowledge already, but you were still willing to try. And I think that's encouraging for a lot of people. Because we're the same. It's not like we have a business degree or something. Yeah. So then what, kind of a practical question, what does a day in the life of running your business kind of look like?
Yeah, it looks different every day. I've got 2 kids. One's in high school and one's a 6th grader. My 6th grader is diabetic, and so there's a lot that goes along with raising a diabetic child and a high schooler and all of their activities and sports and all the things. So I do a lot of mom stuff as well. But I start my day up in the morning. I usually get up pretty early, drink some coffee, get ready for the day, get my kids ready for school, and then go into the shop, check in with my team, see how things are going. And from there, every day looks different. Like I said, it's meetings, catching up with my team, with the social media, emails. There's a lot behind running a business that I do throughout the day. I try to get a workout in. And the days, like I said, they're totally unstructured. I just try to take on things as they come. And some days are putting out a lot of fires, and other days are, sitting down and getting focused and getting stuff done. But I run all of the back end side of the business, to all of the accounting and all of those things. And so, that takes up a lot of time throughout the days.
It's not just making coffee. There's a lot more to
it. Yeah. And then in the afternoons, I get to just be mom, which I love.
Awesome.
I consider myself a stay-at-home mom and a business owner because I still do all the things that the stay-at-home mom does. I get to cook dinner for my family every night, and that's really important to me. So,
that's awesome. I love that. So then what were some of the biggest obstacles or challenges you faced with starting a business and everything, and how did you overcome those?
So I think going back to the fact that I don't have a business degree, that was probably one of the hardest obstacles that I had to face was just not knowing what to do in a lot of situations. But I think being willing to be humble and ask those questions. And I told almost everybody I had to ask questions to, I would tell them, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me? And some were willing to help and some weren't. But I think that was probably the biggest obstacle, was just not knowing anything about anything. But being willing to step forward and, just humbly ask for help, I think is really important. But definitely the unknown, the not knowing, the walking forward into spaces that haven't already been walked into in our area, as far as having a coffee trailer. Like there was one other in this, in Stanislaus, San Joaquin County when I started, and so walking into that and not having anybody that I could go to and say, like, hey, how did you do this? And the county didn't know what to do because they're used to food trucks and taco trucks, and it's a very different thing. And so kind of paving that way was really difficult. But also, really, I love the fact that I got to do that, because now I get to help other people do it as well.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's cool because it seems like you said, like you just went and looked for help. And that's one thing we've been surprised into in the last couple of years, is there are so many people willing to help if you just ask. Like people want to help you succeed for the most part. And so that's cool. I like that. Obviously, I mean, culture is a huge thing for you. That's what you named the coffee shop after, and you've built a really good community. So how did you kind of develop those relationships with the community? Because I mean, they really support you. Like even with the Kickstarter campaign, like they really supported you guys. So how did you build that relationship with your community?
Sometimes I have no idea how. Some of it was intentional, and then some of it is just people are drawn to what we do for some reason, and it's totally unexplained to me. I feel like it's the Lord has like drawn people to what we're doing, and really like allowed it to grow and supported that. But I mean, practically, I would think, it started at the gym, developing those connections with people. I'm very transparent, and I love to have real conversations. I get deep really fast, just like when I walked in here. I'm like, so tell me about your story. That's just what I do with everybody. Someone could walk in the coffee shop and just be ordering coffee, and we'll get down the road of a deep conversation. And that's just, I just love that connection with people, even if it's just a 5-minute conversation. Like, how can we get real with each other? I've always been very transparent about the business, about our struggles, and I think people can relate to that, and they want to support when they can see that somebody is walking a difficult road. They want to support you in that. But I have a lot of imposter syndrome, so there's a lot of like, I don't really know, like, I'm not that cool. I'm like a late 30s mom who runs this coffee shop that for some reason people love. And, on the practical front, again, I know they love it because our team's amazing and the coffee's great. But on paper, it doesn't really make sense. So yeah, going back to like, it's the Lord for sure. Like he has walked me through this entire process and
awesome.
Really brought people alongside to support what we're doing and the community that comes, even if they don't come for that. We serve a lot of diverse people, and so not everybody, believes what we believe, but I think that people can see that we do things differently, and it comes from that. So.
Yeah. And would you say you kind of worked to create a space where anyone of any, background or belief or whatever feels welcome in that?
Yeah, we really try to do that. I mean, our team is diverse. They all have different beliefs and ideas about how the world works. And so it starts with our team, and then we welcome everybody and anybody
awesome.
Inside. It's definitely hard to create a space that feels like home for everybody, but that's definitely a focus of ours, is to make people feel welcome and seen no matter who they are.
That's really good. That's especially important right now. So that's really awesome. How do you create and maintain that culture at Culture Coffee? Because it is like every time we've gone in, it's so welcoming. Everyone at the counter is so friendly. So everything
awesome.
It's really great to be in there. So how do you maintain that?
Yeah, so it starts with the hiring the right people. We don't hold formal interviews. We just sit down and get to know people.
Awesome.
So they send the resume, and I do take that very seriously in looking through people and kind of vetting through. We get a ton of applications when we're hiring, so going through that first. But then the people we do sit down with, we just sit down and talk to them, because to me it's really important to find somebody that loves people, that wants people to feel seen, and that already has ingrained into them that ability to connect with people. Because we can teach people to make coffee all day, but you can't really teach somebody to love people, to see people. And so it starts with the hiring. And then through the process, our main priority is serving people. So when I'm teaching my team, when we have team meetings or, Slack messages, things like that, it's always focused on, like, our first priority is to serve people and see them. And if we're not doing that, we're failing. And so I'm constantly sharing that with our team of like, hey, this situation happened. Like, I'd rather you give a free coffee to somebody than not serve them well. And so we just keep that at the forefront of our mind, that we're in this business to see people, to love them, to care about them. And so it's just very important to me, and it's something that I take really, really seriously.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I like that you said too that your interviews, it's not like a traditional interview, like you actually sit down and get to know the team, because they're representing you, they're representing your coffee shop, everything. That's really important.
Yeah.
So
And I'm a pretty quick judge of character, and so I go with my instinct too.
good.
When we're meeting with someone, I can just tell whether or not
that's
they'd
very
be
useful.
a good fit. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, I really try to trust that instinct.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So kind of what would your next steps be now that you have your cafe and everything? What's kind of your, if it's okay to share, your vision, I guess, going forward for Culture Coffee?
Yeah, so I mean, the coffee shop is so new still that for us, it's really like the focus right now I see is doing things better, continuing to serve our community and do that in ways that get better and bigger, and just finding those opportunities to serve people and doing that really well. We'll be bringing in food and doing, like, we have a plan for all of these things that we'll be adding to the cafe as we go. But I really just want to grow our roots in the coffee shop, which is part of why we sold the trailer a few months ago, was so we could really just water the roots that we have and really serve the community that are walking in our doors and not be diluted into all of these other things. It's really great to be able to take that time to focus in on the community we're serving, and how do we do that better? How do we continue to serve people and offer, fun opportunities like community events or offering different food and things like that. So that's really our focus right now. Awesome. And then, we'll do sort of what we did with the trailer. By the time we outgrow this space, then we'll start looking into what's next as far as like growth. But right now it's really just trying to do what we do even better and growing on what we already have.
That's awesome.
Would you ever think of your idea of growth after you outgrow that building? Is it splitting into multiple buildings, or is it a big building to still keep?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like that's something we'll figure out when we get there. It's all, like I said, led by the Lord. And so for me, it's like, I can only foresee and plan, and I love to have things planned out. I'm Enneagram 1, so I like right and wrong and structure. And, I can do my best to get us to a certain place, but ultimately it's what doors open and which close. And, I think like long-term vision, I would love to have multiple locations, maybe something that's more of like a bakery or restaurant, but who knows where we'll go. Really, it's just right now focusing on what we're doing and and do that well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because it just opened in March, so that's recent.
Still a lot to learn.
Every day is a lot.
Cool.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's encouraging too, because I feel like a lot of people, they think that they have to have every single thing figured out before starting, and you can't do that. Like that's one of the most impossible tasks, is just being prepared for
expert at everything.
Before moving into business.
And that was probably, going back to your question about the hardest obstacles, not being able to have it all figured out all the time was really hard. But that's where I just lean on, something greater than my understanding.
Just
like, okay, like if these doors open, if this thing happens the way it's supposed to, if we, raise the money that we need, or, figure out how to come up with the money for this project, like all of these things, it's like, I take myself back to like, okay, if it doesn't work, then it wasn't meant to work. And since we had the trailer till now, I just try and hold everything open-handed and say like, okay, like worst case scenario, if this fails, I would have learned a lot and taken that into the next thing. So it's definitely, it's hard to not have it all figured out, especially when you're a person who likes to have it all figured out.
Definitely.
That's a good mindset to have though too, because a lot of people are so scared of failure, but like I've heard it said a couple times, but if you're trying, you're already so far ahead of the people that won't even give it a shot. So even if you fail, that's still
it takes
well, and to be honest, I think
spot.
Success is scarier than failure to me. And I think that's when I get down to like where my blocks are or where that fear is, it's like, what if this thing gets to whatever point that is, like, what if I succeed in my life? That's always been something that I really struggled with, is like, what do I do if if it all works? So
get overwhelming pretty quick.
Well, someone with, with anxiety, I struggle with anxiety and depression. And so that's kind of why we started small in the beginning, was like, can I mentally handle doing this? Can I stay committed to something that's going to require work all the time? Because some days when you have anxiety and depression, like there are days that you don't feel like doing anything. And so it was sort of like, okay, like, can I do this thing? And every step of the way has been like, okay, like there's always been a something in the back of my head that's like mentally like, can I handle this next thing? And so, I forgot what we were talking about.
No, that's good.
Oh, the success being scary. So it's always been like, okay, like if we hit that next point, like what if we have multiple locations and this thing just goes crazy? Like, can I handle that?
That's
and I
true.
still don't know, but it's day by day, and I'm constantly learning. And it's that willingness to step into discomfort that really gets me going.
Yeah, that's true, because as the business owner, it's like when it succeeds and it grows, you're still the one that's running it, and you have to learn new skills constantly to keep managing it.
And there's a lot of pressure to that of being the certain person that people want to see. And, you know, I can walk in the shop and I can connect with people and, you know, do the thing kind of, I feel like I put on a mayor hat sometimes of like, you have to walk in and you, like, sometimes I feel like I have to be what people expect. And that's a lot to live up to. It's definitely an aspect of being a business owner that is really difficult. And I think it's difficult for people besides me. It's not just, you know, specific to me, but having the pressure of like being that consistent person that people expect. But behind the scenes, when you're struggling with some really hard things, it's difficult and takes a lot more energy than people would expect.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How have you kind of, if it's okay to ask, but how have you kind of learned to manage that kind of pressure and that discomfort? Like, how do you get through those days where it's really difficult, or days where maybe it's you don't want to go in, or it's hard to keep face, you know, in front of everyone? How have you learned to carry that?
Yeah, so I sometimes will take a step back. Like, I'll stay at home for a whole day, because even going in and getting coffee, you know, if I'm not even working, I'm just going to get a coffee. Sometimes
everybody wants to talk.
Yeah, and I love it so much, but there are times where mentally I just can't. And so I'll just stay home, try and take care of myself, get some downtime. I thrive off of time alone and time being quiet. And so a lot of times I'll do that. I think in unhealth, I will continuously work through it. So I'll just keep going. And I do that a lot, where I just pretend I'm fine until I get home and I'm like, oh, I'm really tired.
I'm not fine.
And thankfully, like, my team is amazing, and not only can I lean on them to run the business when I'm not there, the business can run completely without me, which is amazing. But I also share with them, and I'm open with them about not every little thing, but I can be open with my team lead of like, hey, I'm not going to be in today. I've got some things going on. But I definitely try to stay consistent for my team and for our community. It's been something that I've learned a lot over the last 10 years about how to manage, and having the coffee shop actually helps in a lot of ways, because it gives me a reason to keep showing up and to keep, you know, being there and being vulnerable with people and continuing to work through the blocks that anxiety sometimes puts in my way. I have to constantly work through that. But I think that's part of the reason why I've been able to be successful in what I do, is that I'm always getting uncomfortable and doing things that are really uncomfortable and hard for me. But when you start doing hard things and uncomfortable things, it makes it easier to continue to do those things.
And that's how you grow too, right? Like, you can't do something easy and expect to grow from it.
And so although the anxiety can be debilitating in a lot of ways, it's been for sure something that's helped me grow and learn a lot. So.
That's a really good way to look at it. Hey guys, if you found this podcast to be helpful to you, we would love to invite you to join our community Discord server. In the server, you'll be able to discuss the things you've been learning with other entrepreneurs, ask questions, build connections with like-minded people, and you'll have direct access to Nick and I.
Yeah, and the best part is it's totally free. We would love to connect with you. So if you're interested in joining our awesome community, head over to our Instagram page at Odyssey Productions Co. and click that link in our bio.
We can't wait to talk with you. So kind of along those lines still, you mentioned that sometimes your team can run the business like without you there, which is awesome. But I'm assuming that was probably when you were training and first starting and everything, that was probably hard to kind of let go those first couple times and not be there and just hope it was that hard, like kind of letting that go and letting other people run it and everything too?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning journey for sure. The thing that I think has helped us is that from when I started the trailer, we ran that business as if it were the size that we are today. So we had a lot of systems in place, a training plan in place, and we've kind of worked, you know, when we were smaller to get to where we are now. And so it's definitely easier to let go now than it was when we first started the trailer. It took a few years before when the trailer started to be able to let go and know that my team's got it. Whereas the transition with this, moving into the cafe, was like the first week, I think I worked like 70 or 80 hours, but then the next week I worked 30. So it took a week to be able to let go of that and know that my team had it. And then we're constantly working alongside my team to just help like get them into positions that will allow the business to run by itself. So it's definitely been step by step that I've learned to do that. And then I got COVID about a month and a half ago, and I was sick for about a month. And so I had to stay away, which was really difficult, but my team just showed up and did what they needed to do. And it really proved to me, okay, like you don't have to be there all the time. You don't have to work as hard as you're working to get things done. Your team can do it. And so now, like coming back from, it's been like 3 weeks that I've been back to work since having COVID. It's been meetings with people of like, okay, you took this on while I was sick. How can we get this into a formal role and, create some systems behind that, job descriptions, that kind of stuff. And so in some ways I've been forced into letting go.
You didn't have a choice.
But it's definitely hard, but I've realized a lot that, the shop can run without me. Like it can, and that it feels really good, especially with being a mom and a wife and all of the things that I have to do on a day-to-day basis, having the flexibility of not having to be at work at a certain time is amazing. And it's helped really a lot with the work-life balance and being able to separate both. Because for a long time, I couldn't do that. The trailer was parked on the side of our house and all the things were stored at our house. And I had to drive it everywhere it went. So going from being all up in everything to now I can really begin to work on some of that higher level stuff, the stuff that I'm really good at and that will drive the business forward. Getting to work on that stuff is more exciting than the fear of letting go of everything.
Working on the business instead of in the business all the time. That's really cool. I think that speaks to you as well, though, because if your team is able to take it for a whole month and run it, that means that you were really great at teaching them and leading them, and good job to you too.
There's things I'm great at, and then also things that I really struggle at as a boss. So,
That's cool though. Cool. So then this one's kind of a silly question, but if you could go back in time to when you just started with the table in front of the gym, what would you tell yourself?
Don't do it. I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
I always joke that if I knew then, if that girl knew how much work it would take to both start the trailer and then get to where we are now, I don't know if she would have ever taken the steps to do what I've done, because had I known how hard it was going to be, I don't think that I would have been brave enough to walk into that. So I probably would go back and tell her, just keep going. It's all going to be fine.
Fine,
but part of me would want to say, don't do it. It's worth it, and it's amazing. But knowing who I was back then, I probably would not have done it knowing how much work. But now looking back, I'm obviously glad that I did. And everything all makes sense, but it's been really hard.
Yeah, you never know how much work it's going to be. One of my favorite quotes I've heard, I don't remember where I heard it, but it was, you never would have said yes if you knew how hard it was going to be, but aren't you glad you did? And I love that. I always remember that when something is hard or something, it's like, you know what, I know it's going to be worth it in the end. So that's cool.
Yeah, but not knowing it's going to be worth it while you're in it is
hard.
Right.
Really hard.
Should I have done this?
When you're taking those steps without seeing the end product, it's...
When I always say, from because the position that I worked at the gym, that was like a lifetime thing for me. I loved my job, and stepping out in faith and saying I feel like the Lord is telling me that my job here is done. I always would tell people, I feel like I'm stepping off a cliff and just hoping that something will go under my feet as I walk forward. And I've constantly just envisioned that as I've walked into really scary things is I'm just going to walk forward and trust that next step's going to be right underneath my foot. And a lot of times it's I go to step down and I don't think something's there, and then it'll be there. There are some really scary times, but I just try to envision that even though I'm walking off a cliff, there's always going to be a step beneath my feet, and if there's not, we'll figure it out. I've always been resourceful, and we lived through a pandemic as a small business running out of a trailer, and we figured it out. And so we'll figure it out if the step is not there, but it always has been. There's always been that next step in front of me, even when it's been scary.
And so I'm assuming that's over time too. It's taken a lot of patience growing your business and all these things, right? Yeah.
I don't know if patience is the word that I would use because I don't tend to be a very patient person. I would say faithful is the word that I would use more than patience, because things don't necessarily they do take time, but patience won't. To me, I don't think that having patience is enough to get you through those things. I think it's faithfulness and trusting that whatever the next step is that you're walking into, if you're focused on being in tune with where the Lord is leading your life, for me, then you can't go wrong. Like you just keep walking those steps, and if a door closes, cool, I'll turn around the other way, or I'll go knock on the next door. Like, you know, so it's more faithfulness in that walk than
I like that
patience.
than patience. That's good. I don't have a lot of patience either, so I like that. You kind of mentioned this actually before we even got started with the podcast, but there's kind of a lot of competition when it comes to coffee shops, I think, because people love coffee shops, but also there's a lot of people that want to open them. So what's your perspective on quote unquote competition?
It's my favorite thing ever. Can I tell you a story?
Yes, absolutely.
So we have some friends that have tried to open a coffee shop for a really long time, and they've just been put through the ringer as far as like they thought they had a space for years, and they were working on financing and plans and city and all of that. And for some reason that fell through and they couldn't do it. And so we're not close friends, but I've, kind of chatted with them over the last, 5 years as we're kind of walking the same journey. And they just were never able to open. And then as we opened the shop, they would start coming in, and I would just chat with them and kind of encourage them and see what's happening and what the progress is. And through those conversations, it turns out that they decided, instead of going directly into a shop, that they wanted to start something mobile. And they had approached the farmers market that we were a staple in, and they said, hey, if you guys ever have any room, like, we'd love to have a spot. Not kicking us out, not in that way, but just telling the farmers market, like, hey, if you ever have a spot, just so you know, we're interested and we would love to be a part of it. And one day, the trailer completely broke a morning of the farmers market. We were there, ready to go. Trailer broke. So I had to go into the office of the market manager, and she tells me, oh, this, coffee business reached out. They're wanting to participate in the market. And so I was like, I could go two ways. I could go with, oh my gosh, like, that's really scary. They're going to take over our spot. Like, what's going to happen? So I can look at it like that, very closed fist. But my first response to her was, only if it's Penny University. I was like, there's a lot of coffee businesses out there, but if it's this one, like, they're the right one. Like, they're amazing. These girls are incredible. And it turns out that it was. And with the trailer breaking down, like, everything that happened, I knew that day it was time for us to step out. And that was the catalyst of us, I'm getting chills just talking about it, stepping out of the farmer's market and saying, like, okay, Lord, like, I hear you. All of these things have been put into place. Like, you are showing them that the journey, like walking the journey and being faithful, is worth it. And showing them that when you are obedient and you walk into what you feel like you're supposed to do, even if it's not the way that you think you're going to do it, when you do that, things can happen. And so it was cool for me to be a part of, like, okay, like, I'm listening to the Lord and I'm being obedient and saying, like, okay, like, I see this as a total sign that things are done. Like, I've talked to these girls and, like, really cheered them on and wanted their business to thrive. And then, they're getting an opportunity at the farmer's market, which is how we were able to get to where we are. And so being able to step out of that and allowing them to take that spot was just really cool. And I think that's an example of exactly how I feel about other coffee businesses. When I started, I'd reach out to other coffee businesses, and actually the only person that helped me was the owner of Penny University. She used to work at a local coffee shop. She was the manager there, and she came and trained my team on espresso, and
Nice.
She had supported my business from day one, but I would reach out to other, coffee trailers and coffee trucks that weren't even local, and no one responded to me. No one was willing to help me, and so I was really alone in walking the journey to do what we're doing. And so when the opportunity comes for another business who wants to do what we've done, like, I'm an open book, and that's a priority as far as my time. I will take the time to meet with those people, to walk them through, to help them however I can. Obviously, like, I can't do everything for them, but I am willing to walk alongside people to get them going. And, that's not to say, like, I still struggle with, like, the fear of, like, oh my gosh, like, this person's opening something, like, how is that going to affect us? I'd be lying if, like, that wasn't a thought in my mind, but my automatic response whenever I feel that is, how can I help this person? How can I reach out to them and just say like, hey, if you need any help, let me know. Like, just so you know, I'm here. And sometimes they take advantage of it, sometimes they don't. But I find myself on Zoom calls all the time with people or answering emails, just helping them walk through that process. And I think like that's just important to do. There's plenty of room for all of us. I want to go sit at a coffee shop that's not my own. I mean, I love mine, but I want to be able to go sit at another local coffee shop and hang out and, you know, work there or, you know, just hang out and like fun vibes. And so the more people we can help do that, like just the more opportunity we have to build community together and love each other. And it's been really fun to build community with other local coffee shops. Like we did a latte art throwdown with La Mo and Preservation and Cappuccino. And so it's really cool just to have those relationships and all of us feel the same of like there's room for all of us. And it's not, you know, this mindset where you feel like there's not enough out there. Like there is plenty of room for everybody, unless someone moved next door to me and sold coffee. Like
that'd be messed up.
Even if they did, it's like I have to trust that we've built a strong community behind what we're doing, and we serve a specific group of people that love what we do. And if they want to go get coffee down the street the next day, like cool, go do it. I'm going to be there too. Like, I'll see you there. So yeah, it's been really fun getting to support other local coffee businesses. And I don't view them as competition. I view them as friends and like, how can we do this together? Because I don't want to do it alone.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's cool how you, because this is usually how it works, is you were there to help them, you know, in something that was really important and big for them, and then later on down the road, like, you're going to need help at some point too, and because you help them, they're going to be there to back you up too, and it's just important to have that, because like you said, it's hard to do on your own when you don't know everything in business. So it's
that's what community is about. It's about showing up for each other and supporting each other in the big ways that we can. Like if I can help you, I will. If I can't, then, you know, I probably know somebody who can help you that I can, you know, send you to.
I love that.
The other thing that I noticed too with your story, which is really cool, is whenever the trailer broke down, it wasn't like, oh no, everything's ruined, you know, it stops here. It's not the end of the line. It's just, you were up this maybe steeper mountain, then you took a step down and like, oh, here's the path I'm supposed to be on, right? And then it just like a shift in direction, which is really cool too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love the perspective you have on that too, because like when we started, I really struggled with like, oh my gosh, there's like 5 other videographers in our area. What are we going to do? But then I really felt like the Lord was also like putting on my heart, like, you need to connect with them. Like, don't just look at them and be frustrated or worried. And so we started messaging them, and it's like, they're all so friendly and they want to connect too. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this thing of comparing to try and tear down the other person or anything like that. It's just about building community. So and
that's the worst feeling. Like nothing feels worse than to not like somebody. Like I don't hate anybody, because like that's the worst feeling to carry around. Like I would much rather carry around the feeling of like I reach out to this person or like that we're fine, versus like holding around this like oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out because we're doing the same thing.
Paying attention to every little thing they're doing.
Like I can't hold that. It's too much.
Exactly. So then for anyone who wants to start a business, what would I know it's a broad question, but what would kind of your main tip or biggest piece of advice be to somebody who wants to start a business? Yeah,
I would say take one step forward at a time. And even though it's scary, just keep walking forward and focus on the little steps most often. And obviously you have to focus on the big picture from time to time, but really focus on those little steps that are in front of you, because if you keep tackling those things, eventually, you know, you'll get to the big thing and it'll be all figured out. So keep going, reach out to people for help, whether that's a business mentor, listening to podcasts, reading books. In my last job, we were encouraged, I was on a part of a leadership team, and it was sometimes annoying, like, okay, I have to read 5 books, but my boss at the time, who's a good friend of mine, was like, okay, you guys, this year you're going to read this number of books, you're going to listen to this number of podcasts. And like having that and reading those books and listening to the podcasts and doing all of that really helped encourage me in moving forward. And I think was the only reason I was able to do what I do is because I've done lots of research and lots of reading. And so I think that's really important is finding those podcasts and those books that will help. Obviously, there's a few that really helped me. So doing that and then running your business, if you're starting small like I did, running that really small business as if it were a big business. Because eventually you might be to that place where you're a bigger business and having some of those systems built beforehand. It's a lot easier to mess up when you're small. Like you can mess up and it's not a big deal. You just move on. We messed up all the time in the trailer. We made decisions that were like, wait, that didn't work.
Why did we do that?
But it's a lot easier to turn that small little ship, and kind of move like this than it is when you have like a massive yacht or whatever. I don't know the analogy for it, but when you're steering the Titanic, that's a lot harder. And it's not, you can't make those little adjustments as easily. So work through all that hard stuff, work through all those little adjustments when you're small. And then by the time you're a larger business, you'll kind of have some of that figured out. You won't have everything figured out. There's still a lot to learn. But yeah, I would say those are my biggest pieces of advice.
That's really good advice. I really love that about putting those systems. I've never thought about it that way, but putting those systems in place when you're small, you said that prevents it from being a huge problem down the line when it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
So if you can share, what are some of those systems maybe that you learned or things that you put in place early on that have really helped you or things you learned that, I should have done this,
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing would be the financial side of running a business. So I read a book called Profit First. It's like, anyone that's starting a business, I would recommend that they read this book. And so I read that. I listened to a lot of podcasts and did things like put systems in place financially that we still use to this day. So having a separate account for my business, having accounting help. So thankfully I have a friend who can answer questions and stuff for me. But if you don't, hire an accountant because that is so beneficial just to have someone else that can see where your business is going and, prepare for taxes and all of those things. So establishing the bank account, having someone that can help you with those things, and, putting the money aside. Like we've always put money off the top aside for specific things like taxes and profit. And so, getting the financial picture together when you're small really allows you to learn a lot for when you're big. Same with, when you hire people, like having a legitimate payroll company. Like we use Gusto online, and it's been amazing to have, all the payroll done and just putting those things in place that are just very basic things. But as a really small business, a lot of people don't do those things. They try to figure out okay, how do I do this? And then I didn't put money aside for taxes. Now it's tax time. What do I do? And so having the financial systems in place was a big deal. And then on top of that, training systems, I think in systems. So when one of my team brings something to me and says, hey, I think we should do this, I automatically have to pause, and they think the pause is I don't like the idea. But I pause because I'm thinking, okay, what are the systems that we need to put in place to get to the end goal? And that's just how my brain works. And so doing that on the small scale, again, it's okay, we, have this trailer, we want to make these coffee drinks. What are the systems to put in place to make those drinks? How do we make our team work as effectively as possible? How do we give people, a role and a job description and these are the 5 things that you do to make this drink, and then this is what the person next to you will do on that drink. And so putting those things in place so everyone knows their job, there's some structure and systems behind that. So we've done that from the point of the trailer. As well as having, the online ordering and things like that. We had an iPad that would tell us the orders versus writing on all of the cups. So it's just doing those things that most really small businesses won't do will really help you in moving forward if you have the funds to do them. Sometimes it's I need to buy this $10,000 piece of equipment to do this thing. So I wouldn't say, take that jump, but what are the small systems that you can put in place? How can you you know, maybe you run the business by yourself. Like, how can you write down what you do and your systems so that way if someone needs to step into that for you, then they can, because they see what happens. So, you know, the business should run without you, even if it's really small. You should be able to put together some of those systems to get you where you want to go.
Yeah,
so
that
financials, systems, super important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I would think, too, you kind of need those structures in place to grow. Like, you need it when you grow, but you also need it to be able to grow, too, because if it's not sustainable, then... Yeah,
and you want to serve people well. Like, at the end of the day, you know, even when we were running the trailer, like, yeah, people would voluntarily wait an hour for coffee. We would tell them it's going to be an hour. They would wait. We don't want to make people wait an hour. So it was like, okay, like, we've grown to a point where people are waiting an hour for coffee, and we're telling them, and they're waiting. Like, great that they want to wait. But, like, how can we put in systems to serve them better? So that's when, like, the iPad came in, where we could tap and it would send them a text when their drink was ready.
That's
or,
nice,
you know, getting our team in places to just work more effectively and efficiently to get those drinks out faster. And so it's been a learning process for sure. But you kind of learn as you grow, and like, okay, like, we need to solve this problem. How do we solve it? And sometimes we'll go one direction and that won't work, and so we'll do something else and
just try.
You know,
That's cool. I like that. So then you mentioned one of them, but what are maybe like some of your favorite resources or things that impacted you most that you learned from?
Yeah, so the book that I recommended, Profit First, that's a great one. Also, what was the other one? Christy Wright's Business Boutique book. She's no longer doing that. She was with Dave Ramsey and his group of people. So she's no longer like speaking and a part of his organization, but she has a book called Business Boutique, which is mainly geared towards women opening businesses, and talks through all of the broad categories of like, these are the things that you need to do. So that was a huge resource. There's a ton of other books. I wish I would have brought some with me to show you. I mean, like, Malcolm Gladwell is huge. Simon Sinek, I think he's the Start With Why guy, I'm pretty sure. So all of those, you know, group of people, any of their books are amazing. So books. If you don't like books, then podcasts are great. So I started with the Christy Wright Business Boutique podcast. I don't know if the podcasts are still up because she's no longer with that group, but if they are, it's totally worth checking out if you're a women business owner. Dave Ramsey, obviously, for like financial advice. I don't do everything Dave does. Call him Uncle Dave, but I don't do everything he does. But I think just, you know, he's got some sound financial advice. So that Craig Groeschel's leadership podcast, Entree Leadership podcast, How I Built This with Guy Raz is a really cool, it's podcast from NPR, but he talks about how really well-known businesses got started. So that's a great one. I'm trying to think of who else I follow. I think that's about it. And then something that's specific to your industry. So if you're a photographer, looking for those people that are in your industry, and are there podcasts, are there guides online, are there YouTube videos, you can literally put that in the search bar and find out. And so I do that a lot. I go to YouTube for like Illustrator if I'm creating new merch, or like, I don't know how to do these things, I'll go to YouTube and find them. I thought of another podcast, Jenna Kutcher. She has the Goal Digger podcast, GOAL. And she's got some amazing advice for business owners, especially online business owners. So if they're doing, like, if they're an influencer or blogging or those kind of things, that's a great one too.
Cool. Thank you for those.
It seems kind of obvious, but like, I don't know why it's not something that I thought of, but having that podcast that's specific to your industry, when I remember Abby started listening to it one day, and I was like, wow, this is really good, and this is so much more valuable than the other ones that I was listening to, because they're speaking like directly to you. So it's important for you to, like you were saying, to get that one.
If anything, it makes you feel less alone.
I
know when I hear someone talking about the struggles of what I've been through, it's like, oh, so I'm not the only one. And it's kind of a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Do you design all your own merch?
A lot of it, yeah.
That's awesome. It looks so good.
Thank you. It's a struggle for sure. I've learned a lot. I'm not a designer.
Illustrator's no joke to learn.
But I have an amazing, we use Versola Designs to print everything, and he comes up with some of the designs, or I'll send him a design with my crappy Illustrator skills. And I'm like, hey, this is what I want it to look like, but I know you'll need to fix it. And so he'll go in and change the font size or do different things to make it look better. Awesome. But yeah, even if it's a hand-drawn sketch, I'm like, here you go, this is what I want.
Fix it. That's cool.
One of the things that I really love to share is kind of the behind the scenes of ultimately why we do what we do, and personally what my personal mission is. And for me, it's to be an example of that you can really struggle with some really hard things, but you can still do some great things in life. And so I think I would love to be an example to other people that you can do hard things. Even if you're someone that struggles, you don't have to be this perfect person. You don't have to be qualified to do all of the things that you do, but you can, even if you're not qualified. And for me, we talked about in the beginning when you gave the intro, but our mission is to truly see people and care for them. And I've struggled with some really deep, dark things. And so for me, what I need in those times when I'm struggling is someone to see me. And that rarely happens. Even though I know a ton of people and I'm surrounded by community, I'm not always seen. And so that's why it's so important for me when people walk in our doors that we see them, because you never know, that person that walks in could be struggling with something really, really dark. They could be contemplating suicide or walking through some really hard things. And if they walk in our doors and they're already in that place and then we don't see them, we don't smile at them, we don't make eye contact, we just act like they don't matter, that's gonna have an impact on that person, whether we like it or not. But if they can walk in our doors and they were in despair that morning and they walk in and someone sees them, makes eye contact, asks them about their day, even if it's in a general, how's it going? What are you doing today? Where are you going after this? Just in those little conversations, it is so important for them to be seen. And that's ultimately, I joke sometimes, but it's totally the truth. I created this business so that I could be seen in those dark times and not have the ability to go hide in my bed and not be seen. It's built around I can walk in there and someone's going to see me. And even if I'm, that morning having a really hard time and in despair, that I can walk in and sometimes I act like everything's okay, but that someone will look at me and see me. And it's just that little bit, it's that 2-second glance or eye contact that makes that person feel like they're important, and that will sustain them for, the rest of their day or a couple hours. But that's where that stems from, is we can't be responsible for everybody's mental health. We can't carry all of those things that people are carrying, and we don't have to. I don't expect our team to have super deep conversations all the time. But it's about seeing that one person and really making that difference. So that's kind of a little background behind really why we do what we do and why it's so important. And I love that. I think we should all take that, whether you're a business owner or not. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it, I think moving through your day and knowing that all it takes is a couple seconds of looking someone in the eyes. Because if they already feel unseen and you don't see them, it's just, you've got to take those opportunities to truly see people.
That's really good. I love that.
That is good. And I think a lot of people don't take that into business, because once you're in business, it's about the numbers and, and all that. But I think those details and stuff are really important. And
what's the point if you're
it's all important, as a big picture. You do, there is a reality. You do have to, the finances are important. It is important to make money as a business. That's, ultimately, if you don't make money, you can't sustain your business. So that side of it is very important. But I think the most important is if you have something behind why you're doing what you're doing. If I didn't have a motivation or a why behind what I was doing, I would have quit a long time ago. If it's not important to you, it's one of those things, I couldn't ignore the fact that I am supposed to share my story, that I am supposed to see people. Like, that is just ingrained into my soul since I was little. Like, it's just what I've always felt. And you can't ignore that. Like, you have to walk forward in that, whether it's, training classes at the gym or it's, owning a coffee shop. Like, if you feel that you need to make a difference in a specific way, like, you can't ignore that. You have to do it, despite the fact that, like, I struggle with a lot of things and it's hard, some days to do what I do, but you have to. It's, to walk outside of that, like, I can't imagine. That would be so much more anxiety to know that I'm not living out my purpose and not walking in, what I've been called to do and the people that I've been called to reach.
That's really good. I love that. And that
Sorry, we got real deep real quick.
No, that's
You didn't know you were getting
I love that.
life coaching at the same time.
That was really encouraging. I love it. Just because, like you said, even having that focus is what helps you be able to stay faithful and get through the hard times, because it's like, this is why I'm doing it.
And then be an example to other people that, people that are listening to this podcast or watching right now can see, like, oh, this girl doesn't have it all together. Like, she might look like it and the business might be really fun and cool, but, like, I don't have it all together, and I struggle all the time. And there's a lot of things I suck at as a boss and a friend and a mom, and I mess up all the time. But I want people to see that example and see that, like, you can still do something really amazing. You can still create a business or live a life that is inspiring to others, even if you struggle with things. So I really, like, that's the biggest thing that I want people to take from my example as a business owner and of my life. And when we have these conversations, I want people to take that away and say, like, okay, like, I might be struggling with things. I might be unqualified. I might not know what I'm doing, but she did it, so I can.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that too sets you apart as like, you're a really good leader because you're able to be real.
Because of your vulnerability.
Because if people are being led out of a place that they don't relate with, it's really hard for them to follow. But because you're able to step down and say, I don't have it all together, I feel like that just takes your leadership to the next level. So
thank you.
That's really cool.
It can be hard for my team at times too, like, not having someone who has it all together. But we work together and try our best. So
awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you learned just as much as we did on this episode of the Palikari Business Podcast.
Yeah, for more information on our guests, make sure to check out the podcast description on whatever platform you're listening on.
Yeah, and if you'd like to connect with us and continue the discussion, you can always join our Palikari Community Discord and follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Just search for us under the handle @Odyssey Productions Co. for new podcast clips in your feed every week.
Until then, we'll see you next time.